server case, everybody that wants to get a file or an asset goes to a centralized server or server and downloads that file or asset as a monolithic thing. It doesn't break into small pieces. The clients don't share with each other. You just all get it in a very simple way from the server. To someone in the 1800s, this would be magic, but it's not sufficiently advanced to us anymore to consider this to be magic. The web is a utility, it's a commodity at this point. Now, peer-to-peer, and BitTorrent in particular, is different. You have a sort of mesh of peers, all of whom talk to each other. Each client becomes a server to the other peers, and importantly, files are not considered monolithically. You don't have just one giant file that you either have or don't have in BitTorrent. You break these files up into many, many little pieces, and the peers can exchange those pieces with each other. So let's look at the detailed set of components here. So I've mentioned this collection of peers. In BitTorrent, we refer to this as a swarm of peers. The peers are all connected to each other, and they can be in various states of download. So in this diagram, you see one peer, the peer all the way on the right, has just started. This peer has 0% of the file downloaded. It is able to get the file by going to a site out in the ecosystem, an index site, finding the file, or getting an email link from a friend. It doesn't matter how you get it. Once you have this torrent file, it comes back to the peer, they announce to a tracker. The tracker then introduces them to other peers. So you've collected this set of peers, and now you can trade data with this set of peers. If you are, in this case, like the green peer, where you have all of the file downloaded, then you are said to be a seed, and you are seeding. So it's sort of this collaborative ecosystem of people all uploading pieces of files to each other until they get to the state where they have the complete file, and then they have the opportunity, if they wish, to continue to upload to other peers. That's a seed. So let's look at how torrents are created. Let's say you have a very large video file, and you want to distribute this video file to everyone in the world. You break this file up into a large number of small pieces. For each of those pieces, you compute a cryptographic hash. In BitTorrent, it's a SHA-1 hash. This is, I'm sure, familiar technology to everybody that knows how blockchains and Tron work. You take those sets of hashes, and you pull them into a file. You add to that file the address or addresses of the tracker from the previous slide, the thing where people are able to discover other peers, and you hash the whole thing. When you hash that whole thing, you get what's called an info hash in the torrent world. This info hash is sort of like a master key to the torrent. As you'll see, if you have just that info hash, just this 20 bytes of SHA-1 hash, you can get gigabytes of files. That's part of the power of torrents. You can have this very, very tiny torrent file, and you can kind of inflate it into a giant multi-gigabyte file very efficiently. So note that what's missing from this is the actual data. So the actual data is not included in the torrent file, just those hashes. That's how they're so small. So the process of a torrent being added into a client, and the client is the piece of this ecosystem that we at BitTorrent Tron control. When the torrent is added from the index site, the client is able to take this, announce to a tracker, find peers, and then everyone collaborates until you have the complete copy. You can choose to seed from that point, and ultimately everybody in the swarm can get a complete copy and become a seed. So thanks for your patience as I went kind of deep into the nuts and bolts of how this all works. You guys were promised some magic, and so I want to describe the magical properties of BitTorrent now. So the first magical property is this: capacity scales with demand. BitTorrent has become a de facto standard for scalable content distribution. This is from a research paper called the Cedar Promotion Problem, Measurements, Analysis, and Solution Space that was released, I think, around 2010. We'll see a timeline in a moment here. So this is indisputable. If you have a piece of content and you want to distribute it to, as I said, like everyone on the internet, you can create a torrent file, and then you can seed just one copy. You can pay the bandwidth for just one copy that then goes into the swarm, and then literally everyone in the world can get it without you paying additional delivery costs for that transport. This is magical. This is a sort of like economic abundance that is only enabled by this peer-to-peer technology. So let's talk about robustness, single points of failure. If you have a client-server architecture like this, and you lose a network link, your server's gone, failure. The fault domain, like the area impacted by a fault, when this happens, is the whole system. Nobody can get anything. And you see this over and over, even with very large systems like AWS. There's waves of outages where your favorite sites are all down. It's because a certain data center in an availability zone has gone down, and so your sites are gone. Now, in the BitTorrent case, let's look at this. We have a swarm, and there's only one seed. There's only one person that has a complete copy of whatever you're downloading. And let's say that they lose the network link. So what happens in this scenario? So show of hands, who thinks that the swarm is going to be able to complete downloads when this peer is gone? Okay, yeah, so the answer is yes, / it depends. So in many cases, you are able to complete the download. And the way it works is like this. You have all these pieces, and everyone's sharing these pieces. So down at the bottom here, you can see there's some UI from a client, and you have a downloaded percentage. So the download percentage in this case is 26.8% of the file. But it's not like the client-server model I described, where it's monolithic and you have the whole file or you don't. And it's not a model where you get all the pieces in order, first piece, second piece, third piece. You get them in an order called rarest first. So if you look underneath that 26% bar, you can see a bar where there's sort of alternating bands of light blue and dark blue. So that's called a piece bar, and you'll see that in the user interface of many torrent clients. It shows which pieces your client has. So even if you lose the seed, and there's no seed in the swarm is able to heal itself and regenerate, almost like a starfish that loses a limb is able to regrow it. If, and this is critical, if for every piece in the swarm, at least one person has it, as long as there is at least one distributed copy. And so in torrent clients, you'll also see this interface at the bottom that says availability 10.265. That tells you how many distributed copies exist in the swarm. So it may be that there is no seed, but in terms of redundancy, there are 10 copies if you took everyone's pieces together and computed the union of those pieces. So this is a problem in mathematics called the set cover problem. There's an illustration on the right. You can see here that, not in this notional version, there's 9 pieces. No one peer, T1, T2, T3, or T4 has all of them, but collectively they form a cover. And so the swarm can regenerate. It can be redundant not just the loss of one seed, but loss of many peers. It's sort of like how a bee colony, if it loses the queen bee, the colony itself can sort of like consensus and agree to feed a larva royal jelly only, and then create a new queen. So let's look at another possible single point of failure here. So I mentioned that the tracker is the place where you get introduced to other peers. Let's say the tracker goes down. Well, first there's redundancy built into the system in that a torrent can contain multiple trackers that can be announced to in order. So you can have as many as 5, even more in some cases. You can also have trackers that allow you to announce for any number at any torrent. So open trackers, they don't say, I'm only going to track torrents X, Y, and Z. They can track every single torrent. So let's turn this single point of failure into a catastrophic failure where all of the trackers go down. So what happens in this case? So show of hands, who thinks that it can recover from this failure? Okay, so obviously I promised magic, and the magic is that it can recover from this failure. And the answer in this case is not so much it depends, because of a technology called the distributed hash table. So this is a way that a peer that wants to get the contents of a torrent, that wants to inflate it, if they have nothing other than the 20-byte info hash for that file, they're able to interrogate the swarm and say, hey, do you know anyone that has this torrent file? And the swarm will answer back, no, but I know someone who either does or is closer to someone who does. And this could be a subject for an entire talk on its own, and I don't want to go into too much detail here, but this is a form of magic as well. You kill every single tracker, and you're still able to do it through this DHT. One other critical point about this DHT is that it did not exist in the original BitTorrent protocol specification, nor in the original clients. There was a research paper about a project called Kademlia, which describes the DHT as a construct, and this was subsequently added to BitTorrent clients through a process called the BEP process, the BitTorrent Enhancement Proposal process. So this is a way that a distributed community with no central trusted authority has been able to evolve the protocol over time to include important new features. So the last point on this subject of what BitTorrent does well is about free writing. So if you have any system where there's sort of commons, and people can contribute and they can take. If there's no incentive built in, if there's no structure that enforces people to contribute, then you see a tragedy of the commons, where everyone just takes and no one contributes. Those people are free riders. Now, if you have a centralized system, you can control that. You can have a principle that says you have to go to the office if you misbehave. In a distributed system, it's much more difficult. BitTorrent, I think, often has a reputation as something that is based on altruism and a sort of like free share and share alike mentality, sort of like a utopian ideal. But in fact, from the inception of the protocol, it has built in a mechanism to account for the fact that people will try to optimize for themselves and take as much as possible. So it has this thing called tit for tat. The way tit for tat works can be considered as a sort of auction. If I'm a peer, I have a limited amount of upload bandwidth. I have to figure out how to most efficiently allocate this amongst all the peers I see in the swarm. So I might know many, many peers, but I can't upload to all of them. So research papers have analyzed this as an auction where at a certain time, I get bids from peers. So here, tit for tat bids occur, people send me data. Based on whoever sends me the most data, I will allocate a set of unchoked slots, which are basically a way to divide my upload bandwidth to those peers reciprocally. Okay, so that is BitTorrent's overview, and that is what works really well. So here's what can be improved. So I showed a quote earlier about how BitTorrent is the de facto standard for scalable distribution. Let me pull the curtain back a little bit and show the rest of that quote. So the bad news is that there is a problem. There's trouble in paradise. There's a file availability problem. By some measures, up to 38% of torrents experience periods of unavailability. And this isn't a terminal condition. Like you can enter a period of unavailability, and then a seed joins later, or someone joins that has a partial copy, and then it can recover. But sometimes it goes in, sometimes it goes out. It can be terminal as well. And 38% of torrents experiencing that is a problem. It's a problem not so much for the very popular torrents, but more for the long tail content. The problem of unavailability is caused by the seeder promotion problem. When you have a pawn and it's about to enter the last rank of the chessboard, it has the ability to promote to a queen. And queens have a lot more power. There's huge upside for a pawn that enters that rank. When you're downloading a file as a so-called leecher and you get the whole file, it's sort of like if your boss came to you and said, I want to give you a promotion. You have a lot more responsibility, you're going to have to work a lot harder, but there's no increase in compensation. In fact, you get no compensation. We're taking your salary away. Like, there's no upside for you whatsoever. So why do people do this? Well, in the community, there are sites that enforce ratios. People do it for altruistic reasons. People do it just because when it's done downloading, sometimes it'll start seeding and they don't care that much about it. But we can do better than this. We can make it so that there are actual rational incentives for people to promote to seeders. So here's a research timeline for BitTorrent. The protocol was introduced in 2001 by Bram Cohen. And in 2003, he wrote a paper called Incentives Build Robustness in BitTorrent, which describes tit for tat and how the system is architected to make sure that there are reasons for people to upload while they're downloading. In the same year, someone published the first paper talking about introducing a sort of karma points model, a sort of like token economy to make it so that there would be an incentive for people to seed. And throughout the intervening years, many more papers were published. In 2009, the Bitcoin paper was published by Satoshi, and the world was introduced to the blockchain. And at the same time, and in some cases a couple years later, more papers were published about the seeder promotion problem where they proposed solutions. There are a couple of ways you can try to solve it. One is a single torrent, like how do you create an incentive for someone that has a seed to keep uploading? It's very difficult. They have the whole pie. What can you offer them? Nothing. The naive solution on top of that is a sort of multi-torrent approach where you say, well, let's say that I'm on this swarm with you and I'm on that swarm with you. If you upload to me here, I treat that as tit for tat in this other swarm. The problem is that that sort of co-occurrence is too rare, so that doesn't work. So you need a multi-torrent solution that has some sort of economic basis, some sort of token, some sort of karma, some sort of currency, if you will. So briefly, we'll zoom out a bit from the deep technical stuff and look at this ridiculous ad from the 1800s. So the first lesson from this ad is that the tactic of selling through fear has existed basically forever. You've got a gentleman reading a newspaper with a safely adjustable oil lamp wick on one side, an unfortunate woman that does not have this safely adjustable oil lamp wick, who has lit her curtains on fire and is terrorizing her cat. At the bottom, you can see that the vendor for this wick accepts flowers, groceries, and country produce in exchange. So this was not uncommon in the 1800s America. You could go to town and take a bunch of fresh eggs and exchange them for something. But the problem with this barter model is the coincidence of wants. You need to find someone that has the lamp and wants something that you have. So if this woman's a novelist writing books, she can't get the lamp. She has to find a miller she can trade a book to for flour, and then take the flour, trade the flour for the lamp. This is the issue that is solved economically by introducing a medium of exchange, one of the 4 functions of money. Okay, so I've described the blockchain. Most of you guys understand already a big part of how that works. I've described BitTorrent in more detail. I hope now you understand how that works, where it's strong and where it's weak. And at this point, I want to introduce BitTorrent Speed, our product, to reconcile the problems with BitTorrent by connecting it to the blockchain. So what does it do? First, it creates a medium of exchange and solves this coincidence of wants problem, which in turn solves the seeder promotion problem. Now when you have a complete file downloaded, you can seed it, earn tokens, and then you can turn around and spend those on others' forms. It moves from a barter economy to an economy with a medium of exchange. It will be implemented first in our clients, and then, like the DHT, as a set of optional protocol extensions that we'll introduce as BEPs. It will be backward compatible with the existing clients, torrents, and trackers that are out in the wild today. It has 3 major components. 1, the BitTorrent clients. Our clients are the most popular in the world. There's about 100 million monthly active users, and this is the portion that we control. So in the ecosystem diagram, we don't create torrent files, we don't run index sets, we don't run trackers, but we can evolve the protocol by changing the way that the clients behave in concert with our users. It involves BTT, which is a TRC10 token that will be used as this medium of exchange for torrent acceleration. And it involves the Tron blockchain as the solution that allows us to connect the BitTorrent users who have BTT to dApps, to other use cases, and make this really something that could bootstrap the whole community. What does it mean for users? First, faster downloads. We've created a reason for people to seed, so there will be more seeds. Therefore, you'll be able to download faster. Probably regardless of whether you choose to actively fund with this token or not. The seeds will be there, and the ecosystem as a whole will benefit. The rising tide will lift all boats. You'll also have the ability to earn for seeding. So the other side of that coin of faster downloads is that if you seed, you will have a rational incentive to do so. This has huge potential for file sharing and for the blockchain space. As I said, we have about 100 million monthly active users in 138 countries. We're about 22% of total global upstream traffic today. And we're launching a page about BitTorrent Speed today. So you can go to BitTorrent.com/speed. You can enter your email address and sign up for more updates. You can read the BTT white paper if you haven't read that yet. And we need your help to define this product and to understand how we can best engage with the Tron community. So please do that. So I want to leave with one final thought. I hope today that I've helped you to think about BitTorrent in a sort of new light as a very functional and robust protocol that nonetheless does have this Achilles heel, and blockchain as the solution to that Achilles heel. It's sort of like this experience we've all had of meeting someone at an event like this or at a party and thinking, you know who you need to meet? You need to meet my other friend. And you put them together and you can unlock massive potential.